So what's up guys, welcome to Namespace Node, and in today's tutorial we're going to learn how to deploy a simple application on Kubernetes. A very simple application and a static website for that, and it's also meant for beginners. So if you have prior little experience in Docker, Kubernetes, you'll do this lab without stress. So at the end of this video you should have the website up and running like this on Kubernetes. It's just a simple website, as I said, front-end page, static websites that just display cars, and this is what you should have at the end of this tutorial, so stick around. All right, so what you're going to learn in this tutorial, first of all, you're going to learn how to deploy a static website using Docker and Kubernetes. Right, very important, Docker and Kubernetes, because applications don't work on Kubernetes until they are containerized, and then unless they are containerized rather. You're going to learn how to push and manage Docker images. Right, for this tutorial we're going to use Docker Hub, and if you are using AWS ECR or Azure ECR etc, any Docker, any image registry works for this. But for this tutorial we are going to use Docker Hub. And finally, I'm going to learn how to expose the application using Kubernetes services. Right, it's very simple, straightforward. So let's take a look at the deployment overview. That's the workflow. First of all, we are going to clone the repository. We are going to clone the repo, build the web and build the application, containerize it, push it to ECR, and finally we are going to deploy this to Kubernetes. And cloning this, we are going to use a lab environment called iximiuz. So they offer a free dev machine, a Kubernetes cluster for us to play around with. So we are going to clone this on iximiuz, and then iximiuz has Docker installed. It has Docker installed, and also it has Kubernetes provision for your Kubernetes environment provision for you. So we're going to build this guy in iximiuz, Docker build, and then we are going to Docker login. So this can go before this, obviously, any of them works. And then finally I'm going to push this to Docker Hub for this tutorial. And then for the very important part, deploying to Kubernetes. Kubernetes is open source and it has different providers. AWS provides EKS, that's Elastic Kubernetes Service. Google provides GKE, Azure provides AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service. But for this tutorial, to keep it very simple and make sure everybody has access to it, I'm going to use still iximiuz.com, and that will be labs.iximiuz.com, because they give you a free 1-hour lab. So, and this tutorial should be done in less than an hour. So you can just play around with labs.iximiuz.com, because they provide you a free 1-hour sandbox, and that fits our needs perfectly fine. So watch this video to the end and you're going to gain a whole lot from this video, and practice it more than once, right? And then you're going to get a hang of it. Let's take a look at the GitHub repo of the application. It's a very simple application, as I said. Take a look at this. This is the repo, link in the description. It has assets, and then the manifest file that I already wrote, and then the Docker file. It's just static, index.html, and then every other thing follows, right? I already put together a detailed deployment guide here so you can follow. As I said, Docker install, the Kubernetes cluster. For now, we're going to use the lab, etc. So you can also follow these steps, right? The commands I'll use are already documented here. So let's take a look at the Docker file, right? First off, take a look at the Docker file. Okay, so you can see the first part here. We are using the base image Nginx, and that's because it's a static file, it's a static website, and Nginx is the best option we have here. It's fast, reliable, and easy to work with. So Nginx here, this here is our base image. the base image, and then the work directory, right? usr/share/nginx html. So here is just the work directory for the project. Quite straightforward. So this command is where the magic happens, right? Which means you are copying all the files in this repo, that's the assets, the index.html, into this work directory, right? This usr/share nginx html, you are copying everything into it, and then we are exposing this application on port 80 because that's the default port for nginx, and that's just for serving http requests. And this is the default command for nginx, just to keep the container alive. This is the default cmd for nginx, right? So that's just it for the Docker file. That's it for the Docker file. Now let's take a look at the manifest files. Okay, now so for the manifest files, right, it's in the kube folder. I already put it there. It's in the kube folder. So if you take a look at the deployment.yaml file, it's very, very short. Then to just give a brief overview of the deployment, API version is app/v1, of course, because it's the deployment in Kubernetes, and then this API version basically defines application resources in Kubernetes, status sets, and then deployment use API/app/v1 rather. And then the kind here is obviously a deployment, metadata, the name, Kavila, etc. So we're currently deploying this application with 2 replicas, which means 2 pods, right? And then these are the match labels. So right now, the major place I want to focus on is the containers specifications, right? So the name nginx, we are going to change this obviously to, let's say, Kavila, and then the image, right? So as I mentioned earlier, we are going to build this Docker image ourselves, and then push it to Docker Hub or any registry of your choice, right? So that works perfectly for me. We're just going to change the image name later on, and then change the container name later on, right? So now check the services, right? To check the service.yaml file, it's also very, very straightforward. The kind service, and you can see now it's using apps/v1. It's using the v1 API version, right? And then very important place here, very important section here is the selector, right? This selector tells it which pod that I should redirect traffic to, or forward traffic to rather, and that's the Kavila deployment pods because it has the same labels. So right now we are working on port 80, the service port is 80, and then the container port is also port 80. Here is the service port. This is the port the service listens on, and then this is the container port it forwards traffic to. So if you want your service to listen at port 400, 4000, etc., you can set it that way. It's your choice, but I always prefer port 80 just to keep everything simple and easy to use. All right, and then the last part here is the cluster IP. The cluster IP here means users, only applications or nodes within the Kubernetes clusters can only communicate to this application we are going to deploy. But we would like to interact with this application or over the internet, so we are going to change this obviously to a load balancer service type later, and that's when we clone everything. So yeah, let me clear this up, and then let's now go to the lab environment, and that's labs.iximiuz.com, link in the description. So the reason why I love this guy so much, they basically give you an hour free 1 hour lab to play around with Kubernetes. They give you a playground, and then you can sign in. I'm already signed in, or can sign up. It's a very simple process. So here's the playground, and I'm just going to start this playground. And why I always prefer them over other free providers because of how everything is structured. Take a look at here. You have a dev machine, you have this control plane, you have 2 nodes, right? But if you take a look at the other part, you basically have only 1 hour, just an hour. So right now 59 minutes. I see node 1, node 2 rather, node 1, node 2, control plane, and then dev machine. Yeah, so we are up and we are running. Yeah, so first things first, let's clone the GitHub repo, link in the description. So I'll come here and I say git clone this. Take note, paste is Ctrl+Shift+V, not Ctrl+V. And then let's check this out. Clear my screen. cd into car and then take a look at the Docker file one more time. It's complete. So now let's authenticate into our Docker Hub account, right? So I'll just do a Docker login -u namespace node 0. Choose my password. Okay, incorrect password. Did I spell that? Oh, I didn't spell my username correctly. Name. Yeah. Okay, so it should work now. Login succeeded. So let's build this image. All right, let's build this Docker image, and the command for that is docker build -t dash. You're tagging your image, your username, name, spaced, node 0 slash the repo you want it to get stored. You can just use any repo. For me, I'm using car villa, and then you specify the part of the Docker file, which is currently dots because it's in my current directory. So you see this, and then starts building. This should take just some seconds, right? Nginx is not that big, it's a very small image. So yeah, it's done. So now let's push this, right? Docker push namespace node, just the image name, and then preparing to pushes this to my Docker Hub registry. So everything works fine, and then it has been pushed. So for us to deploy this application, right, let's copy this. Copy your image name first of all. Copy. You right click because it's Ctrl+C does not work on terminals. So now let's see. Vim. No, let me clear this up to make this easy. So if you ls, my files are in the cube folder. So you have to cd into the cube folder, and then vim deployment.yaml. So you scroll all the way down to your containers. You press I to go to insert mode, and then for Nginx, you can just name this car villa, rename the container, and then for the image name, you replace this with the image you just built. Ctrl+Shift+V to paste. Escape, and then :WQ. That's to save and quit, or you can just do Shift+ZZ to also save and quit. And then now we are free to apply this file. So to apply this, you can say kubectl, which is just alias -k on this lab, apply -f deployment.yaml. So if you check, it has been created. If you run this now, k get pods, as kubectl get pods, you can see that our containers are creating. If we run this command again with a -w flag, that's to watch, you see that our pods are now running. So if you say k get pods one more time, it's running. So right now everything is deployed, right? Everything is fully deployed. But how can we access this application over the internet, right? If you come over here and you say, let's cat service.yaml, this is your Kubernetes service, and then you come to create it and you say, okay, k apply -f service.yaml, you can see your service was created, right? Service was just created. But this is a load balancer service. If you say kubectl get services, kubectl get service, you see that the service was created, right? But it's a load balancer service. So users can't interact with your application. You basically have to create a load balancer service. It was a cluster IP rather, now you need to create a load balancer service. So if you come here now and say vim into this service.yaml file, and then edit this part from cluster IP to a load balancer, yeah, and then you apply it again, yeah, you can see that the service was just configured. So if you say kubectl get service, you can see now the external IP address is pending. But because this is a lab, right, it's very, very limited, just for you to get the hands-on experience. They won't give you an external IP, but they're going to give you a node port, a link for you to just play around with. So as you can see, kget services again, you see that it's still pending. But if you check your ports here, you see there's a node port of 32060. So that means this application is available on a node on port 32060. So if you come here to click on this button, you change it from the dev machine to any of the nodes, whether node 1 or node 2, and then you come to the port and then you paste the node port. You now expose this. If you scroll down, you're going to see this. So if you click on it, the application should be live on this, right? So you successfully deployed this app. You can see now Kavila, and it's loading up quite slowly. Yeah, it's a lab environment. But on my next tutorial, I'm going to deploy this same application on AWS EKS, and I'm going to use iximiuz to create a cluster and then play around with a lot of things. So that video, I promise it's gonna be very, very interesting, as this one is. So thanks for watching, guys. Yeah, you can play around with this. Just see car display page, and after everything, don't forget to terminate the lab environment, yeah, to just save up cost for them. So you can terminate this guy and everything works perfectly fine.